Welcome back to Recapped. Today we are going to recap a 2014 physiological thriller movie titled No Good Deed. Terry Granger, a mother of 2 children, lives a happy life. Things turn upside down when a psychopathic killer enters her house and poses a threat to her family. But before we begin, please consider subscribing to this channel. Now, without wasting any further time, let's begin, shall we? This film begins with Colin Evans, a man who has been in prison for 5 years and is seeking his parole hearing. He was the main suspect in the deaths and disappearances of the 5 young women. However, he claims to be a changed man who has been rehabilitated, one of which is teaching other inmates to read and write. A psychologist who has studied his case says he's a good liar with a malignant narcissist personality. As a result, the parole board denies his release and re-incarcerates him for another 5 years. He pretends to have a nosebleed on the way back to prison. He's pointing the gun at the officer until they're both pointing guns at each other. He murders the van's driver and the officer before fleeing in the van. The plot shifts to another man, Jeffrey, who packs his belongings and plans to visit his father's house. He decides to live alone and leaves his wife at home with their children. Colin, on the other hand, pays a visit to Alexis, his girlfriend. She appears surprised to see him back. He comes to question her about why she never replies to all of his letters. She becomes terrified. It reveals that he has infiltrated her home when she is not present. He also discovered a letter from his new boyfriend, as well as letters from him that had never been opened. She tries to flee from him as he pursues her. For both of them, the situation appears out of control until she says, "Yes, we did sex right here, in this bed. Every time. And it's fantastic." He's becoming enraged with her. He starts strangling her neck and hitting her hard with a bedroom lamp until she dies. He flees in a car. As he drives, he begins to lose his sight due to the storm. The car is losing control and colliding with a tree. Meanwhile, Terry is finishing up with her second child and preparing dinner for her first child. The sound of a bell is being played. When she opens the door, she has no idea who he is. Colin is the stranger in need of assistance. Apparently, he was injured in the accident. He claims he needs to borrow her phone to call a tow truck. Because the storm will make it difficult to wait, she decides to let him in. She attends to his injuries. And he meets her first child, Ryan. She claims that his husband will return home soon. She hands him a clean shirt. They start a small conversation about anything. It is concluded that she and her husband are lawyers. She used to work as a prosecutor in the homicide division before she married. He then sneaks into her room. He looks her in the eyes and asks, "Are you looking for your husband?" She admits that her husband will not be returning home. Terry's friend, Meg, arrives at her house and interrupts their conversation. She has agreed to accompany her while she is alone with the children. Terry then introduces her to Colin. Meg inquires as to where he resides. "River Road," he says. She is a realtor, and she believes she knows the names of every house on River Road, but he is unable to respond. They are both abruptly interrupted by the sound of a broken branch. He saves himself from Meg's question at that point. They made their way to the kitchen to share a drink. She approaches him as he prepares to smoke on the balcony. They're also sharing a cigarette. She starts asking him about his relationship with Terry. She accuses them of having an affair, but he tries to persuade her otherwise. He creates a schism between them both, which is why Terry doesn't tell her because she doesn't feel particularly close to Meg. As her best friend, she doesn't believe every word he says because he's completely delusory. She leaves to call Terry, but not before putting her baby to sleep. He is currently hitting her with a shovel until she dies. He's a horrible psychopath. After she's finished, she asks him where Meg is. He responds, and she changes her mind and leaves the house. Her umbrella is still there, indicating that she knows he lied. She decides to call her instead of leaving him. She can't call her because the phone cord is broken. And the scene demonstrates that if all of the knives are taken, all of the power is turned off. She rushes into her children's room to make sure everything is fine. Then she sees Colin, who is playing with her son, Ryan, and unintentionally notices a gun in his pocket. She quickly puts her child to sleep and they both leave. When he talks to her, she squirts him with a fire extinguisher and hits his head until he falls off the stairs and faints. She quickly takes her baby and wakes up her first child without hesitation. The fact that he wakes up and asks her to put her baby back changes the plan. He enters the bathroom to clean himself while Terry remains inside to prevent her from fleeing. He changes his clothes and asks her to do the same. He makes her turn around, and then he sees her body. She is terrified and begs him not to harm her. She straight hit his head until he weakens when he wears his shoes. She attempts to flee to her room, locks the door, and dials 911. Unfortunately, he comes up behind her and points his gun at her. When he threatens her, she takes the opportunity to stab him with a knife. He fires his gun. She now has no choice but to beg him to leave because she has called the police and they are on their way. He rejects her offer, forces her to take her children, and then follows her. She discovers Meg's blood-soaked body in the garage. They travel by car, with her driving. He appears unhealthy because he has lost a lot of blood, as shown. On the way, she passes her car by the police car and tries to give them a signal by flashing her car's headlights without his knowledge. The officer stops them and requests that they pull over. But Colin puts her baby up as a threat in case she tells the cops. The police officer begins questioning them. At the moment, her son, Ryan, asks her where his father is, and all she wants to do is go home. He has a strange feeling, so he decides to ask her out of the car and see if everything is okay. But she says she's fine. She makes a fictitious statement to him about having an affair with the man in the car. The officer suspects something is wrong between them, so Colin jumps out of the car and shoots him until he dies. He throws his body into the ditch. He points his gun at her and threatens to kill her if she tells anyone. They then return to the car. They arrive at Alexis' house, the home of his murdered girlfriend. Terry puts her children to bed while he requests that she bring a first-aid child for him. She is startled to see a woman's corpse on the floor. The lightning is currently making her alarm's car beep, and he intends to turn it off. Before he gets there, he ties up her body in case she didn't flee. Alexis' phone is ringing at the same time. She tries to cut her hand ties before answering the phone. It's from Jeffrey, her husband, which she had not expected. It demonstrates that he is having an affair with Alexis. And now she knows, which is why Colin came to her house. She is shocked, but she tells him to call the police immediately. Meanwhile, Colin notices that all of them have vanished and concludes that they must have fled through the window, so he decides to pursue them. He is mistaken because Terry and her children are hiding inside the house. He is still in front of the house when she is about to leave. She temporarily confines her children in a small warehouse. He hears a footstep from the top floor and realizes she is still inside the house, so he searches for her. She stabs him with a knife until he collapses, but he is too strong. He stands up and points his gun at her. And she says she knows everything, so she explains why he came into her life. Her husband is having an affair with his girlfriend. Suddenly, her son, Ryan, appears and interrupts them. She kicks his cock and pushes him away while she still has the chance. He strangles her neck far too tightly. With all her strength, she takes a key that closes with her and repeatedly stabs into his wound. He beats her, but she fights back until he appears to have passed out. He wakes up sick. They get into another brawl. At this point, she collapses on the floor where his gun had fallen. She takes his gun and shoots him 100 times until he's dead and thrown out the window. Everything is finished. She had a terrible moment. Jeffrey is on his way to Alexis' house. There are a few police officers present. He approaches his wife, Terry, and apologizes. What kind of man is he? She looks furious, punches him until he falls, and then walks away. They've just finished. Terry moves into a new house, and the plot shifts. As you can see, she hires a nanny for their children while she returns to work. She appears to be content with her new life. And this is where the movie comes to an end. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, until next time.